Hello everyone and welcome to Keep It Classical. My name is Dr. Matthew Nielsen and today we're going to start talking about the Romantic period. I took a poll of my subscribers not too long ago about your favorite epoch, and far and away, you like the Romantic period best. So if you're excited to finally be talking about the Romantic period, let me know in the comments below. As with the other videos previewing each period, we'll be discussing an overview of the period, some historical context, general characteristics, and what kind of listener would enjoy this period. So let's get started. As discussed in other videos about each of these epochs, it's not so easy to nail down specific years when these periods began or end. However, I will go on a limb and say that there is a really clear date when the Romantic period is born. October 6th, 1802. More on that date later. And remember, this isn't to say that this is when the classical period ends, because as we mentioned before, overlap. As for when this period ends, it's tough to say because in many ways, it really hasn't ended. The aesthetics and philosophies of the Romantic period are all still very much alive with us even today. Again, overlap. Remember, each period begins as some sort of reaction against the period that came before it, and the Romantic period is no exception. One of the biggest differences between this period and the previous ones is the evolution of the composer's role, and indeed the artist in general, from a simple servant of a patron into a force of creativity. Did composers continue to maintain relationships with patronage? Of course. And for some, the patronage of the past will continue. But instead of seeing them as the same level as their cook or butler, patrons will begin to see their relationship to the artist change. Music starts to become about personal expression of the individual artist. Because of this new paradigm of what the composer's role is, their music takes on a new character as well. There is a new emphasis on the hero's journey as they brave the world and its elements alone, high adventure, and the tortured mind. Lots of composers during this period will start to see themselves as these heroes in their art form, and in some cases as martyrs to it. There's also a new and incessant obsession with novelty and originality. Each composer wants to push the envelope in one way or another. Maybe through the quantity of players, maybe through the timbre and orchestration, maybe through concept or text ideas, or maybe through harmonic language and resolution. Oddly enough, we also begin to see a steady increase of music performed from the distant past. This begins with Mendelssohn's performance of Bach's St. Matthew Passion in Berlin on March 11, 1829. At the time, the work was about 100 years old and was seen as a relic of the past. Composers were generally aware of their predecessors, but for the most part, the music was rarely, if ever, performed for the public. In general, the public was mostly interested in hearing contemporary music. Continuing a trend we saw in the classical period, church music takes a serious back seat. It's not eliminated, and you can find plenty of composers who continue to write for the church, but its volume diminishes drastically compared to the amount of music written for the concert hall or opera stage. And when a mass setting or other liturgical work is created, half the time it's with a very secular or humanistic hand and not intended for liturgical use. Still affecting Europe was the growing and accelerating industrial revolution. Factories with mass production, automation, and many jobs to fill provided lots of economic opportunities to many of the same peasants revolting against the monarchies. This gave rise to a growing middle class that had more discretionary spending, who spent it on music and other entertainment. This growing middle class didn't just give rise to a growing audience who had new access to art, it also gave rise to a growing market of amateur musicians, eager to purchase instruments and sheet music. And a growing number of amateur musicians made way for a growing number of self-taught musicians and composers. It did, of course, come with a price of exploited labor, child labor, countless workplace injuries, and horrific amounts of toxic pollution. No getting around that. As far as general characteristics go, music continues to expand in size, scope, duration, and concept. The size and scope of works grows quite rapidly, almost like an arms race. Orchestras not only increase in the kinds of instruments in their ranks, but the number of instruments in each of their sections. This borders on the ridiculous when canons begin to perform alongside orchestras. It's really, really tough to beat canons. Interestingly though, while the size, scope, duration, and concept of works and the performing forces started to expand, we also see the rise of the opposite, the solo recital, a performance by one artist for the entire duration of the concert. This trend began with a solo piano recital and continues with recitals by any musicians that are accompanied by the piano. Now, there have been lots of performances by a solo piano in concerts previously, but it was usually one or two pieces on a concert bill with other larger works. It's part of that same idea of the composer or the performer becoming the hero on a journey braving the world and its elements alone. This will include works and performances by Beethoven, Schubert, Schumann, Chopin, Liszt, Brahms, and many more. Opera evolves in several ways during this period, and in many ways reaches its artistic apex. We return to an obsession and fixation on the virtuosic dexterity and power that we saw during the Baroque. This will be known as bel canto opera. About halfway through this period, though, opera will go through another rapid change towards becoming an all-encompassing art form, flowing from scene to scene with little or no transition. Meanwhile, the subject matter, characters, and narrative, and duration will reach epic proportions, even going as far as to take place over the course of multiple days. At the end of this period, we'll see opera evolve more towards the idea of conveying actions and events in a manner more true to life than in a stylized or fantastical manner. We also start to see a new separation into nationalism and nationalistic music. This is seen in the music from Italy, England, Germany, the Nordic countries, and Russia. In some of these cases, this emphasis on national pride through music is relatively benign, while in other cases, it inspires some truly horrific turn of events. And of course, we see a rapid expansion of tonality and far-reaching chromaticism. In simpler terms, we start to see the harmonic language expanding well outside the tonic-dominant relation that we see in the Baroque and Classical periods. Composers reach into distant keys with new and exciting harmonic relations. Unconventional and unexpected resolutions of harmonies start to break open the previously accepted ideas of tonality and common practice harmonic function. Composers keep pushing the envelope till it eventually breaks. And rather than seeing this as the point of Romanticism ending, we should see this as a part of the natural evolution of the Romantic idiom. What sort of listener will this period generally appeal to? If I'm being snarky about it, emo kids, the misunderstood person in your family, people who appreciate the idea of film music prequels, and anyone who revels in large-scale everything. For many people, this is their favorite period, especially romantic music written between the middle and the end of the 19th century. This music is still tuneful, but it begins to shake off the confines, stuffiness, and protocols of the classical period. It still very often has an accessibility about it, but adds some new and spicy harmonic flavors. The music of this period easily wears its heart on its sleeve. But there are definitely downsides to this period. Most of the composers of this period were red-blooded men with severe character flaws. And yes, men. Women were largely silenced during this period. Also, while the Romantic period has definitely heightened the drama, it has a tendency to tilt heavily towards the melodramatic. It starts with Beethoven, but it goes right through Victorian England. Eventually, it will reach a point of overripe romanticism where it feels like it's beginning to overstay its welcome a bit. But honestly, there's a lot to love about the Romantic period. No pun intended. And it's a treasure trove of history that shows the accelerating evolution of music. That's all for now. If you're excited about the Romantic period, make sure to watch the entire playlist of videos about it. Or watch one of the other playlists about a different period of music. In the meantime, keep it classical.